What? What is up, y'all? Oh my gosh. Talking about things. I was just eating some food. So, today is the 5th of January, 2025. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. This is In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Now, I'll do a little spiel as I do, a little rundown on the company, and then we'll get into this episode of the podcast. So, In the Image Clothing Company is not just a clothing company, but we address the human body. We are called In the Image Clothing Company because we are all universally designed in the image of our living God, who is Jesus Christ. And that's how I can speak for people across the globe. If you're in a country or continent that's so far away, just meaning pretty much the other side of the globe from where I am, I discuss things that apply to you and apply to human beings forever. The things that we discuss are the patternings that our bodies get into, how to allow our bodies to just naturally work. The body only does what it does. We come at the human body from the skeletal system. The fat content comes and goes, and so does the muscle mass of our bodies. But the skeletal system will always remain as long as we are here. That's our foundation. Like how in the gospel of Jesus Christ, we talk about building our house on a rock, a firm foundation. Everything else after the foundation is put on top of it. So anything within the body that you want to address, you have to address your skeletal system first, because it's the thing that's allowing your body to have any kind of operation in any kind of physical way. So, yes, clothing needs to sit on every single human. If you're a man, if you're a woman, if you're old or young or tall or short or fat or skinny, every single person, pants need to be entirely above the hips. Off of the hips, so the hips have all their natural ranges of motion and movement. And for the waistband, it needs to be slightly higher in the front than in the rear of the pants, because our core is something that needs to contract to activate and to work. Our core would always be activated, always, naturally, because it's the center of our whole body, and it has to always be turned on because our whole body only actually works as a whole. But it's common in 2025 for people to have a deactivated core almost constantly, which it never should be deactivated. So it's kind of crazy. I have experienced that. I had in the past, won't now that I know what I know. But yeah, that should never be the case. So keeping the pants higher in the front than in the rear will allow that core to just stay activated as it naturally always would, because human beings are set apart from animals in the physical function sense, where we have things placed onto us that really can alter the way that our bodies work. That's why we are what we are, right? The company that we are. So our tops, the shirts that we wear, or anything on top of us, the seams on tops of those shoulders need to be behind that little bone that's up on top of the shoulder. It's actually the other end of our collarbones, because that allows our shoulders, to be in their neutral position. With button-up shirts, it is different because it's not just a seam that's on the top, it's this whole band of material. So this little seam here is in front, I'm aware, but button-ups are different. And then right at the very edges for those edge seams of the shoulders, just because that's where the shoulders actually move in that shoulder ball and socket joint. Okay. So, wow, I'm like very chill in this episode of the podcast. This is episode 31. This episode is titled Natural Utensils, because in the Image Clothing Company, okay, I'm going to get into that, but first, there's two prerequisites. As well as just allowing clothing to sit where it needs to, we have two prerequisites as in the Image Clothing Company, just to allow the body to be unaltered, in addition to just having your clothing fit on you correct. Lacing the shoes that you wear with In the Image Clothing Company's technique that we use, found anywhere that you find us online in 2025, you can find us. And included with the technique of the lacing is to tie the shoes evenly over toward the inside to get an even foundation traveling up your entire body. Both sides of your body, you tie evenly over toward the center of you. And then the second prerequisite is to remove all tags from clothing, even within the shoes, because they will either be affecting your natural dorsiflexion and plantar flexion of your ankle, or that natural gripped arch. So if you can't get them out, because sometimes they just heat shrink them on, if you can just roughen them up, get some texture to them so that there's not slipperiness that your muscles can't activate against. So, cool. Yeah, natural utensils. Because here's the thing. We live in a unnatural, man-made 2025. Okay? The body of the human being is natural. All that there ever actually is nature, natural things. Because we can melt things down in factories and we can put things together out of what we've found on the earth. But those materials that we're melting down were natural, and we formed them with other things to create what we think is like a new substance. But once it just gets left out to decompose, it goes back to just earth. The whole time it's been earth, but it just, we see it differently, and yeah, that's just how it is. So everything's only natural and only always will be. And we live in 2025 though, and we have plastics. And that's actually, I was going to list off a few things, but that's the biggest thing, is we have plastics, which is essentially just oil. You know, they take oil and they melt it down, and then they make a mold out of usually some kind of metal, just because it won't melt. You know, it has a higher melting temperature than the oily substance. So they make this metal mold and they pour this melted oil into it, and it's shaped the way that they want that thing to be. And then it cools down and hardens. And there's your thing made out of plastic. So there's your spoon, your fork, your bowl. And that goes for anything and everything within our modern world that's plastic. That's just how it is. They just melt something down, and so it's hot and like runny, if you will, like molten. It's kind of like almost a liquid because of the temperature that it's at. But then once it cools down to just like regular temperature, like the environment around it, it gets hard. And that's what plastic is. So yeah, like polyester within clothing, same stuff. It's just little tiny strands of plastic that they've woven together to make clothing. And so we're just wearing oil. We talk about that all the time. We always will talk about unnatural materials and the need for natural when and if we can, always. So yeah, because we don't have a say, we don't have a choice over it. There is only natural. Everything else is just entirely fake and doesn't last. It doesn't stay. It will always go back to what it was before. So, yeah. Wow, I'm very, very calm. It's also the Sabbath, and I went to church today, kind of. I didn't actually go to any meetings, but I went to the church. So, yeah, it's been a good day. It's been quite an unexpected day. So, yeah, it really has. Now, when we eat, because I have a episode either 16 or 17 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast is titled Eating Truths. And I talked about quite a few things when it comes to eating, positions of our body when we eat, the things that we store our food in, the water content that's within food, how things are preserved longer nowadays than they could have ever been in the past, and how, you know, that really can only be in an unnatural way. In the ways that I mean, it really can, because yeah. Anyway, I talked about a lot of that stuff within that episode. And then, well, I want to be kind of clear about saying that. I mean, you can preserve food by, like, smoking it, you know, like they smoke meats, and, you know, canning or jarring things. That's a fairly natural way of preserving things. But yeah, I just went into some of that stuff within that episode. And then I just did an episode a day or two ago, episode, it's in the high 20s, I don't know, 28, 29, one of those two. Just a couple episodes ago. I think it was episode 28, as far as I'm aware, of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, titled Vegetarianism. And I've been vegetarian, like entirely vegetarian, for 11 months, right around 11 months from this point back. So I've talked about food, and we will talk about food, because we're not just about clothing. Clothing is just the thing that's placed physically on us, and so it has the highest potential to alter our bodies to that degree. But sleeping, eating, sitting, standing, walking, natural movements of the human body, we discuss all those things. So, and we always will to whatever degree that we do, just because we're about the human body's natural function. And the key word's natural, and the key word is always allow. We just allow the body to work through everything that we do. We don't need to get our bodies to do anything. They're designed to work. We just need to allow them to. So, yeah, let's get into a little bit of a thorough discussion here on materials that we place into our mouths, because I'm not going to talk so much about storing things into certain types of materials or containers, because that was episode, like I said, I think it's 17, as far as I'm aware, 16 or 17 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, Eating Truths. But I will talk about this, and pretty thoroughly, because what happens so often is we're using things that go into our mouths that are just plastic, or any kind of material is just unnatural. So what'll happen is you'll get like a spoon or a fork or a knife, but it's not so common for us to put food into our mouths with knives. Spoons and forks, though, if they're plastic, no matter how natural the food is that you're eating, using seriously just melted down and reshaped oil, which is what a plastic spoon or fork is, to move that food from the plate that it's on that could potentially be melted down and rehardened plastic, oil. Yeah, and putting that into your mouth, what you don't want to do, I'm not telling you what to do within anything. Don't believe me. I always say, don't believe me, but I'm just discussing truth to the best of my sinful, by nature, human being ability. So, when we eat food, though, we don't want to touch our tongues to the utensil. So, like, if you are eating, what's a good example for explaining this? Something that you're going to scoop up with a spoon, and you put the spoon into your mouth and, like, get the food off of it. I'm not telling you what to do, but don't touch your tongue to the spoon, because your tongue will sense the spoon, and that's not something you're actually eating, because that's usually what happens. I feel like it's most common for people to use the spoon like facing up still when they put it into their mouth. Otherwise, you'd dump the stuff off the spoon, unless it's really like peanut butter. Any kind of like nut butter is pretty darn sticky, and it'll stick to the spoon. You can put it upside down and on your tongue, but it's so common to put the spoon like right side up, right, as if it's like a little bowl that's holding the food, and your tongue will be on the bottom of that. And if you pull the spoon out and you've touched your tongue to the bottom of the spoon, but the food is on the top of it that gets, that stays into your mouth when you pull the spoon out. Now your tongue, which is where your taste buds are and all the receptors that are telling your body what is going into it, all it's touched at first was either plastic, if the spoon's plastic, or metal, if the spoon's metal, or whatever material it is. And we don't want that material in our bodies at all anyway. And not only that, but that's what we've told our bodies through like our tongue's sensory system is going into us, is the plastic of the spoon or the metal of the spoon or whatever material, not the food that's on the top of it. Because the first thing that gets introduced is that spoon taste. And not only does it just get introduced, but it kind of sticks with you as far as in your taste buds. And so now your body doesn't quite fully accept that food into it, because it doesn't think that it's actually what the food is. And yeah, this is weird, but that's really the case. So when you're eating with a utensil, don't touch it to your tongue. The biggest thing is the taste buds, because it sends a signal through your whole body. Because if you think about eating something sour, your entire body like it knows that it's sour. It's not just your tongue that's reacting to it. Your tongue sends signals through your body's nervous system, and your entire body knows. So, yeah. when we eat stuff with utensils, we want, especially the tongue, because the lips don't really have the same kind of receptors that the tongue does. So, like, yeah, the lips can touch the spoon because you gotta get the stuff off the spoon or the fork or the utensil. But that tongue, especially, you just don't want it to touch anything that's not the food that you're going to actually be ingesting into your body. So, that's a big thing. It's also really important with drinking. If you're drinking something out of a plastic cup or a bottle or a glass cup or a bottle, don't touch that to your tongue. I know in my past I would do that a lot. I would be, or if it's a metal, plastic, glass, any material that's not the liquid that you're going to put into your body, your tongue has sensed that material. And so it, because your tongue like makes your body aware of what's about to happen, right? When something gets introduced to you, because I talked about this within that episode of eating truths that I referenced of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, where everything that we place into our bodies is foreign to our bodies until it can accept it. And it needs to do that in the way that's going to be the most natural for the whole system of the body to do. It's nothing about us thinking about it, like overcoming our mind when we're eating it. The body has its own systems that we don't control. So I discussed how we need to introduce everything as naturally as we can for our body's sake. And we don't want to be tasting something that's not actually anywhere near edible food. And that's what we're doing when we're touching our tongues to a cup or a glass or a bottle. So when you drink things as well, just, drink it and just have it touch your lips. I mean, the lips are just the opening of your mouth that are going to allow it so that the liquid doesn't fall out of your mouth when you're drinking it. You don't need to touch your tongue to it is the point. That's really the big thing is we don't need to. There'd be no benefit. And in fact, is going to have a negative effect if we do. So, but a lot of what happens is the position people's bodies are in. People have what's called a tongue thrust a lot of the time, where their tongues, and you can tell that just by people speaking, and you can hear it in my voice now, in my speech now, because I can articulate my words well, and I just couldn't in the past. And it was because of the position of my physical body, like the rest of it, all the way from like my feet up, right? So really, the feet were one of the biggest things as far as it's one of our two prerequisites, the shoelacing and tying evenly over toward the inside. So a lot of people have what's called a tongue thrust, and so their tongue is sitting so much more forward in the front of their mouth than it should be, meaning than the body is actually designed and set up to be. It's not any kind of opinion or like, being proper. It's no, like, for the sake of like, presentably proper. It's no, the body is, again, it's just a machine. It just does what it does, and the tongue is not supposed to be as far forward as so many people's are. But there's a lot of things, tags within the rear of collars of shirts and pelvic positions because of shoelaces and waistlines and tags within pant waistlines, uneven drawstrings, all the things that we discuss in the Image Clothing Company. We're about the human body. So, well, shoulder seams, it's sitting incorrect, right? Putting the tongue more forward if the shoulders are rounding forward into external rotation and all the things that we discuss, that's why we are what we are, man. We speak on truths, universal truth. So, but yeah, so that'll cause your tongue to just be kind of more forward anyway when you're going to like drink out of something, and then it just potentially will touch the thing, and it kind of seems natural to you in the time to put your tongue against it because it's, when you're opening your mouth, your jaw's already so much more forward, kind of, but there's so much more going on with it than that. Really, it's like your cervical spine's just so much excessively curved because of the imbalance within the body that it actually places your tongue forward into your mouth farther than it would naturally sit. So, yeah, when we drink, we don't want to be touching our tongues to the container of what we're drinking. So, a big thing as well, though, is, like I mentioned earlier, nut butter. Peanut butter is, any kind of nut butter is going to be the same type of thing, but peanut butter is so common, at least in this part of the world, to have when it comes to nut butters. And when you have a container of peanut butter, nowadays it's so common for it to be plastic. And so you've got this plastic container, and then if you take a knife to scoop the peanut butter out to spread it onto whatever you're going to put it on, usually bread, if you have any kind of serration in the knife, right, a knife that has little grooves in it that you can cut through things easier with, rather than a knife that's just one like smooth blade. But either way, because that way it's got a pointed tip usually as well, and it's just sharp even if it's not serrated. So what happens is you'll scoop out the peanut butter, and so common to be scraping the edge of the inside of that container, and you're scraping little pieces of the container into the peanut butter that's now on the knife, putting it onto whatever you're going to put it onto, but bread, right? If you're making like a sandwich or just like putting peanut butter on bread, and now you've put plastic onto that, and you're eating plastic because you've just shaved little pieces off of the inside of the container with the sharpness of the knife. So when we're doing things like that, scooping things out of containers, especially with knives, just because they're sharper than spoons or forks. Forks, pretty sharp though on the tips. But just don't scrape the inside of these plastic containers or anything that could come off, even if it's metal. If you can shave little tiny pieces of metal off of the container that whatever you're getting the food out of is within, that's going to go into your body. And you don't want that because it's unnatural. Your body would never have that inside of it if it had any kind of say. And we're not doing it intentionally. That's the big thing, even mixing things. If you have like a big bowl that you're mixing stuff in, and it's made out of a material that has the potential to have some of that material scrape off into what's being mixed, then you're going to have that in your food. It's going in your body. And then it goes on the other end as well as just the utensil you're using to scrape the things out or to mix the things with. If that utensil, like a plastic knife, part of that little knive's serrations can break off, and not even if like a whole serration breaks off, even though they're really small, but just like very small little pieces of plastic from the knife can go into your food, and that's going into your body. No matter which end it's coming from, it's really important to be intentional about not scraping these things against each other. Because I know growing up, that's what I would do all the time. You've got the peanut butter is a great example for this, because you've got that plastic container of peanut butter and it's almost empty. And so you're just trying to get the last little bit out of it because you don't want to throw away what's in there, if you're trying to use it all. So you're scraping the edge of the container, but we're not aware of how much plastic we're scraping off and then eating. And it's a lot if you're doing that. I mean, a lot is a relative term. But a lot meaning our bodies don't want any in them, and it's just so common for us to be doing stuff like that. So, but also, like I was saying, it's common for plates to be plastic. And when I'm saying plastic, it can just be any material that just wouldn't naturally be in your body. It doesn't have to be plastic only. But plastic's also just so much softer than something like metal or ceramic. And ceramic, I mean, there's probably like a lot of different types of what you could label something as ceramic, but clay, it's pottery at that point. It's actually natural, it's earth. So that's different, except for those things have like a coating on them a lot of the time. So you get like a ceramic plate, and then it's got like this glossy coating over it. So now you're like cutting something with a knife on that plate, and you're scraping off that coating that's on the ceramic and eating that. So it doesn't matter. That's why I'm saying that's what I was saying. Is it's not just plastic, but it's just anything that we wouldn't actually be eating that really commonly ends up into our bodies through ways that we don't really realize if we're not being intentional. And it's not just about being so particular, but your body, it's toxic. I mean, plastic is just oil, like I'm saying, in some form. They've just made this in a factory. Your body doesn't want that, no matter what kind of intentionality you're at in your current time or anything. It can't do anything with it, and it has to try to reject it, but now it's inside of its whole system. It has to travel through the entirety of your whole digestive system before it can come back out. And so your body has to deal with it while it's in there. And there's stomach acid and just all sorts of, stuff within your body that's breaking down food. And that will, to whatever degree it does, break down the plastic. And then it can just be absorbed into your system even further because what your body is just already naturally doing. So, I mean, it really does cause a lot of stuff that just would never have to happen and shouldn't happen because it's unnatural and the body is natural. So, yeah, I mean, it can come from anything at all because it's just so common nowadays it just never was. I think this is a big thing to say. I think that a lot of people don't realize plastic is only about 100 years old. There pretty much wasn't any such thing as plastic farther than 100 years back from today's year, 2025. And just about nobody on the earth is even 100 years old. And so pretty much everybody who's here has had plastic be something that existed within their lifetime. And so it doesn't seem so strange to this generation / like the generation before us. But then you go back just one more generation and it didn't even exist. There was no such thing as plastic ever until then. It wasn't even a thing to ever have a thought about. It didn't exist. That's what I mean by it's unnatural. It literally did not exist. I want to hit that because it seems weird. We live in this world and there's plastic everywhere in modern 2025. It wasn't even a thing around 100 years prior to now. That's crazy. It's just so strange that can be the case. So yeah, I mean, that's a lot of what I talk about within the company because, people might hear what I'm talking about within clothing and natural materials and stuff, and they might think that we're just being over particular, but it's just that it's something no human being could have ever even had the possibility to have a problem about before it got invented. And that was very, very recent. As in, like I'm saying, probably about 2 generations of human beings back. And then never before then was there even such thing as plastic. So, yeah, I mean, I'm always saying we need to ideally wear 100% natural materials because that's all there is. It's so strange to even be able to say stuff like that. It's just the truth. It's weird. So strange how yeah, it's so weird. So, anyway, yeah, when you're eating stuff out of containers or off of containers or with utensils, just be really aware of what you're putting into your body. I mean, it's I think the weirdest thing is it's like I feel weird having to even say this because it seems so obvious, but it's not obvious. And that's so crazy how we can get that far out of touch with the only thing there actually is, which is nature. It's weird. I mean, if there's no human beings for X amount of time, everything would just go back to being how it was before we got here. And we think, not me, but a lot of human beings think they're like on top of the food chain, on top of the world. No, not anywhere near that at all. No matter what any of us wanted to believe at any time of our existence. It's just not the truth at all. So, yeah, we got to keep ourselves, as natural as we can, living within a fake society. It's so crazy. I mean, it's just gratitude, man. And I keep saying that. I'll keep saying that as much as I say that. Like, being able to talk about stuff the way that I can because there's no opinions in this kind of stuff. It's so unreal. Man, yeah, it's weird. So, anyway, yeah, that's one thing that'll really help your body work. It'll help your digestive system just be able to work properly. I mean, keeping things out of it, that's a pretty obvious one as far as unnatural things like that. But also just having it be introduced to your body through like your mouth, right, and touching it to your tongue, your body's gonna just want to reject it. And so now that food just won't get processed the way that it naturally would have. So yeah, this is mostly just out of personal experience. Like I guess pretty much entirely out of personal experience what I'm talking about within this episode, because I mean, I didn't hear anybody really tell me to start doing this. I didn't like do research about this. It's just as I started to, get where I am now, as far as back to the only truth that there is. Again, just stuff that's so weird to say, but it's just how it is. Yeah, this stuff's just, I've just been understanding it more. So yeah, I guess that's just about all I'm gonna say for that. Yeah, I mean, once you introduce temperatures, it just amplifies stuff. Gosh, I mean, we've got microwaves. That's a whole thing in itself. Oh my gosh. I mean, we'll talk about eating as and when we do, and it's so weird how far off we are, man. So strange. But what I was saying about temperatures is, plastic, they warm it up to a certain temperature so they can mold it into what they want. It cools down to a temperature to where it hardens again. But if you take any plastic anywhere and warm it up to the temperature that it will melt to, it'll just be as molten as it will be at that temperature and just be able to be like flowing, kind of like fluid. So yeah, if you introduce plastic to heat in any kind of way, you're trying to heat food within plastic, or you have hot food and then you place a plastic utensil, fork or spoon or whatever into it to eat, even if it's an extremely slight degree of melting that happens, you're probably melting that utensil a little bit, and now that's going into your body just because it got hot enough to kind of like change its state from solid to closer to liquid. Gosh, it's weird. It's very weird. I'm so like content though about this, and like I don't know, it's beautiful to be able to talk about this kind of stuff. Beautiful to be able to know, because as obvious as it actually is, it's not obvious to us. It's very just paradoxical. The paradoxical gospel of Jesus Christ. The truth of all things. So, yeah, be intentional. Just be intentional. That's all it's about. Just being intentional. There's no over particularity when we're just talking about truth. So it's just very strange. Okay, we are a clothing company after all. In the Image Clothing Company, we will have clothing available made out of 100% natural materials, staying centered, fitting correct, allowing the body to work. Please just only ever purchase In the Image Clothing Company clothing if you have the intent to do everything you can to try to get it in your size, because it's so common for people to wear oversized clothing that will just be so opposing the whole point that we are ever selling any clothing for people to have, because the only way we're going to allow the body to work is by allowing it, to the best of what we can do, to be in its only natural working position. The skeletal system only connects the way it does. It only operates and hinges and pivots and rotates the way that it does in the positions that it does. So just, yeah, if you ever purchase clothing from us, just try your best to get it in your size. Yeah, another one of those things that just should go without saying, but we're in such a far off point in life in this current year and just this time period. I was as well in most all the ways that I talk about when I discuss things, but it's just crazy that can happen. That we have like the opportunity. I've been talking about this, just like, well, through like prayer, just thinking about it, that we have the opportunity to mess up. That we have the opportunity to make our own decisions. I feel like that's a little bit like almost like shouldn't happen. You know what I mean? As far as like being given the ability to do that by our God, it's crazy. It's weird. It seems like, no, that's a little bit too much. Like almost like we need a leash on. You know what I mean? That's how it feels, man. It's just very strange. Very strange. Once we just start to be able to get back to seeing things for just as they are and always will be, regardless of what we want to believe, it just gets so weird to see things. So anyway, Yeah, this is In the Image Clothing Company podcast. We have 3 sides to us: In the Image Clothing Company music and In the Image Clothing Company, just the main side. The anatomy of the human body and clothing is what we discussed there. So, yes, thank you. It's really cool, man. Yeah, I'm so content with this. I love this a lot. So, yeah, I've got Frank the guitar, cute little half-sized Yamaha guitar, and that's what you'll see / hear a lot of within the Image Clothing Company music as far as content right around this time period. So if you'd like to check that out, then cool. And yeah, so it's the 5th of January 2025. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. Thank you for listening to episode 31 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast on unnatural, well, let's word it, let's say it on this end: natural utensils. Okay, thank you.